Hello, my beautiful computer science students. Welcome to another AP CSA lesson where I, Goldie, take you through Unit 2 using objects. Today's lesson is Lesson 6. We're going to talk about string methods. So in our last lesson, we talked about how strings are objects, they're class data types, reference data types, and they have a bunch of methods that come along with that. So we're going to be talking specifically about the ones you'll encounter on the AP CSA exam, but just know there's going to be many string methods that you would be able to use in your program. So let's get started. Before talking about string methods, we have to talk about string indexing. So we know that string literals are made up of letters, digits, and characters together. And each symbol in a string literal is assigned what's called an index. In Java, indexes in a string literal, they start at 0 and then they go up by 1. Escape sequences, which we talked about in the last lesson, even though technically they are two symbols, they count as a single index. So like the tab escape sequence. It's made up of two symbols, but that counts as a single index in Java. And that's kind of the only weird thing about indexing. Otherwise, it's very straightforward. Starts at 0 and goes up by 1. The quotes that you see when we create a string literal, like in this example, string message, APCS is a fun class, in quotes. These quotes encase the string literal. They do not actually make up the string itself. So when we go to index it, okay, and I made a little table with the indexes, those quotation marks do not count towards it. Okay, so the first letter in our string literal is an A, capital A, and that is what you see right here. It gets the index of 0. And then each character after that, the index goes up by 1. Okay, even spaces, symbols, all of that counts as a character in your string literal. So everything gets an index. Okay. And indexes are important because they allow us to use our methods. Okay. Now there are 5 methods you have to know for the AP CSA exam that deal with strings. They are listed in your Java quick reference, so you will be able to see what those methods are and a description of what they do, but you'll probably use them enough throughout this course that you'll just have them memorized by the end. But just know while you're learning them, it is totally okay to look them up, to see examples of them, just so you can kind of get used to them. These 5 methods that we're going to use, they are built into the java.lang package, meaning we do not have to write these methods. These are methods that have already been written by someone else and we are just using them. And the java.lang package specifically is automatically imported into each Java program. So we don't have to have a separate import statement in order to use these methods. We can just use them. Okay. Each of these methods that we're going to talk about returns information about the string literal that called it. So we've used methods before on objects, and we've used methods that are both void and non-void. They return stuff if they're non-void, and they don't return anything if they're void methods. All of the methods we're going to learn return something. Okay. Again, we use our reference variable to call on these methods, and they're going to return some information about whatever string called them. Okay. So here I have our example again. The message is APCS is a fun class, and I have the table there with each of the indexes just for reference as we're learning these methods. So the first method is called the .length method. Okay. So .length is that method. It has open and closed parentheses. It does not accept any parameters. Okay. What does it do? This gives you the length of the string. Okay. So it's going to return an integer of some kind. That's the length of the string itself. Now here's your example. It says message dot length. Okay. So message is your reference variable. So if you go up here, remember that message was the name of your variable. So we're working with that string literal. APCS is a fun class, .length. So what's the length of this? Well, your indexes go from 0 to 20. Okay, start at 0 and go up to 20, which means that there's a total of 21 characters in that string literal. So message.length is going to return the value of 21. Okay. It returns how many characters you have. It does not return the maximum index. Okay. Actually, it's the max index plus 1 is what it'll always return, because your max index is 20. Plus 1, that's going to be how many characters you have, okay, because you count for that 0. So that's the dot length method. The next one is the dot substring. And there's actually two dot substring methods. They're an overloaded method. Okay? So we talked about overloading methods earlier. The dot substring is an overloaded method, meaning that whatever parameters are going to be present, that is, it's going to determine which of the methods you use. This first one, dot substring, again, all lowercase in there, substring is lowercase. It says as parameters, you got int from, comma, int to. Okay? So this method accepts two parameters, two integers, specifically, two integers. And what it's going to do is return the substring beginning at from, whatever number is in place of from, and ending at 2 minus 1. Okay? And it returns what that substring is. Now, when I say from 2 minus 1, okay, it's the easiest to describe with an example. Let's say I have message.substring 6, comma 17. So those are two integers, 6 to 17. Okay? Well, 6 starts at the lowercase I, and 17 goes up to the A. But the substring goes up to, but not including that last index, which means it actually goes up and reports back from 6 to 16. So this method returns a string, is a fun CL, okay? Because that goes from the 6 to the 16, okay? The 2 minus 1, so the 17 minus 1 is 16, and that's the index that it goes up to. Okay? So this method returns a string, a substring, okay? A portion of the larger string. The other substring method accepts one integer parameter. So this is, again, dot substring, spelled the same way. Now you notice I only have a single integer in there. Okay? And this method returns a substring from whatever index is right there to length. Okay? Now when we say length here, remember length was 21 in this example. Okay? And my substring goes up to, but not including length, meaning it goes up to 21 but not including 21. So if I got message.substring 15, I'm going to go up to but not including the length. So I go up to 21 but not including 21, meaning I stop at 20. So I start at 15 and go up to 20. I get class with an exclamation mark. Okay. Students, the easiest way to think about this is just it goes, this is your starting point, and then you just go the rest of the string. Okay. Whatever the rest of the string is, just grab it. That's the end of the string, all the way to the end. So two substring methods. One accepts two integers and one accepts just a single integer. The next one is dot index of. And this is a capital O right here. I don't know if it's easy to tell or not, but that's a capital O, index of. And in parentheses, it accepts a single string. Okay? And what happens is it returns the index of the first occurrence of the string, whatever that string is. If it can't find that string, it returns a -1. Okay. Now the string in our examples, it can be like a single character, or your string can be a word of some kind, or a partial of a sentence of some kind. Okay. And the reason it returns -1 if it's not found is because -1 is not a valid index. So if you get -1 back, that's signaling that it wasn't found, versus if you got like 0 back, well, 0 is a valid index. So we want to make sure that we return something that isn't a valid index, so we're not confused about if it was found or if it was not found. So if I got message.index of lowercase a, Notice I see a capital A right here, but that's not what I'm looking for. I need a lowercase a. The first time a lowercase a appears, it starts at the left and it goes through all my indexes, is a 9. Okay. I also have a lowercase a here, but index of starts at the beginning of your string and moves through your string looking for that lowercase a. So it's going to return a 9 because that's the first occurrence of that lowercase a. Message.index of capital I. There is no capital I, right? There's a lowercase I, but capital I and lowercase I are two different symbols, okay? So that's going to return a -1 because it could not find that capital I. Okay. That's index of. Okay, and then the last one you have to know, the dot compare to. I'm going to use another example to better explain this one, okay? So the dot compare to, it compares two strings, basically to see which one comes first alphabetically, okay? So there's 3 situations you have, okay? You could have, when it refers to this, this means the calling compare to other. Okay, this is the calling reference, okay, what comes before the dot. And then when we talk about other, that's what's your parameter, that's what's in parentheses. So when we say this is lexicographically less than other, that means that this comes after other in the dictionary. It's a little confusing. Okay, so we're going to go through some examples here to help. When we talk about lexicographically, we mean dictionary order, okay? And the best way to think of dictionary order is to think of like this little table here. So if I say A to be a 1, lowercase b to be a 2, c to be a 3, etc., okay? So think of like that's dictionary order with A at number 1, okay? Let's compare letters. And when we're comparing letters, this is for the AP exam. Don't worry about the value that's returned, okay? Because the method returns an integer. So you're going to get an integer back of some kind. Don't worry about the actual number itself. What you need to be worried about, or concerned about, not worried, I guess, don't stress. You need to concern yourself with if the number is positive, negative, or 0. That's really what we're going to use in our programs and when we code, is if the number is positive, negative, or 0. Okay? So let's look at our first example here. I have first equal to C, and then I take first dot compare to A. Okay, so C and A. I'm comparing C and A. Okay, now C is my calling, so that is going to be my this. And this is lexicographically greater than other. Okay, again, this. And then this is other, because other is in your parentheses. Now, because this is greater than other lexicographically, by 2, that's going to be the value that's returned. Okay, this, I'll write it again, is lexicographically greater than other. And this is what really gets students confused, is because when you think of a dictionary, you think, oh, C comes after A, and you use that word after and think that it must be less than, right? If it comes after, less than, but that's not the case here, okay? You need to kind of take apart that thinking, okay? This comes later than the other, okay? It's greater than other by 2, so it returns a positive 2 because of that, okay? So it returns a positive. It returns a positive. Again, you don't have to worry about the value 2 necessarily, but it returns a positive because C is greater than A. Okay, think greater than as in like, again, the table 3 is greater than 1. C is greater than A, so it returns a positive. Okay. Let's look at C and G. Okay, C and G. Again, this and other. Okay. This is less than other. Okay. This comes before the other. And because this is less than other by 4, the compare to is going to return a negative number. Okay, so it's going to return a negative 4. And again, the value itself, the 4, I'm kind of showing you why it's negative 4, but you don't have to worry about doing that in your head. Okay, just it's negative, right? C compared to G, C is less than G in the dictionary, so it's negative. The last one is if you compare two things that are the exact same. If you compare C to C, and they're the same, you get a 0 on the return value. Okay. That one takes a bit of practice. That one's a tough one to kind of wrap your head around, which is why I kind of recommend, I like the table to think about when we think about less than or greater than, and then the this and the other. Okay, whatever you have to do to try to remember it, if the table is helpful, if some more examples are going to be helpful, remember you can always run the code in your compiler if you want some examples to try to remember, but you have to know the dot compare to, and you have to know what it returns just in terms of not in value, but in magnitude, if it's positive, negative, or 0. Okay. All right. We're going to look at some more practice because those are the 5 ones. Those are the 5. So let's do some practice with some of these. Okay, so I'm still using AP CS as a fun class. I'll have that table there for reference so you can kind of look at it. But we're going to go through and check out what some of these return. Okay. If you wanted to pause the video and try it on your own, you are more than welcome to, and then start it back up when you're ready to see the answers. But let's go through this together if you would like. So the first one, words.substring 0, 2. Okay, so words, APCS is a fun class. That's what I'm calling it now, just to make it a little bit shorter. 0 to 2. So remember, it goes up to, but not including that 2. So what actually gets returned is just the letters AP. There is no space that gets returned. It's just the letters A and P, because it goes up to, not including the 2. Words.substring 3, 7. Okay, same thing. Starts at 3, up to, but not including that 7, means that CS space I is what gets returned. 15, 21. Now there's no 21 as an index, right? Okay, but that's okay because we go up to index 21, but not including 21, which means that the fact that there's no index of 21, that's okay, okay? Because we're not trying to include 21. We go up to 20. So class with an exclamation mark, that is actually what's going to get returned there. Okay. So you are allowed to go one more than the end because you go up to but not including. This is your starting point though. So the lowest that first number can go is 0. Okay. This can go one past because it goes up to but not including that. Okay. Words.substring 0, 1. Okay, 0, 1 starts at 0, up to, but not including 1 is just the letter A. Okay, so this is actually a trick you'll see a lot when we start coding some problems. When you have, in your substring, when you have 2 numbers right next to each other, that means it's going to return a single letter. Okay, that's how you get it to return a single letter in your string, or a single character. So if I see substring 11, 12 right next to each other, I know that they are returning a single letter. And that single letter is going to be whatever's in position 11. So in this case, it's going to be an F. Okay. Substring 9, 13, A space FU. Oh, I'm so sorry. Wow, I did not think that one through. Don't tell on me. Okay. But yeah, moving on. Okay, so here we might have a few special cases. So let's talk about some of these. Words.substring 0, 0. So what happens when your 2 indexes are the exact same? You actually get what's called an empty string. Now an empty string is not the same as null. Okay, null is nothing. Okay, but an empty string is represented by 2 quotation marks right next to each other, and it means that there's nothing. So that's what an empty string is. Okay, null. Well, I guess I should be careful. Null is nothing, but an empty string is an actual thing. It just has no letters in it. Okay, 20, 21. So we talked about 2 numbers being right next to each other is a single character or a single letter. And the fact that this goes up to but not including 21 means that I'm just returning that exclamation mark. Okay. If I try to have a negative in there when I don't have negative indexes, okay, that's going to have an error. Okay, that's our first error. That's what's called an index out of bounds error. Okay, it would be the same thing if you tried to do like 10 comma 3. If you tried to start somewhere and end lower, like a 10 comma 3, you will also get an error if you have that code. Okay, I forget what it's a different compiler error, or it might be index out of bounds. I can't remember now off the top of my head, but you will also get an error if you tried doing that. Okay. What if you have no parameters? Remember, substring either took 2 parameters or 1 parameter. So what happens when you have no parameters in there? You also get an error. Okay, index out of bounds. It's expecting either 2 parameters, 2 indexes, or 1 index. If it gets nothing, it's a compiler error. Okay. If I just have the 0, that means I start at 0 and go all the way to the end. So dot substring 0 is how you get the entire string back. Okay. And then again, dot substring 11, okay, fun class, exclamation mark, all the way to the end there. Okay, these next couple, this is going to be our first taste of a method inside another method. Okay, so you see I have words.substring 6 comma words.length. So I have a method inside of another method. When I have a method inside of another method, just like the order of operations, whatever is inside gets evaluated first. Okay, so I have substring, and then inside substring I have words.length. So that words.length is going to get evaluated first. The length of this, remember, is 21. Okay, there's 21 characters. So that gets evaluated, that returns a 21. So then now it's this dot substring, 6 comma 21, that is going to be evaluated. And 6 comma 21 goes up to not including 21. So it is a fun class, is what's returned there. So same thing in here, words.length, that's inside of that other method. Words.length is 21. Okay. Now if I have words.length.21, words.length is 21, and then I have dot substring of 21, that's going to return an empty string. Okay, that's actually, it almost seems like a special case in that sense when you're trying to return the substring of 21 and there is no 21. Okay, it's an empty string. Okay. This next one, 3 comma words.length minus 1. So it's almost like a little expression in here. So words.length is 21, and then we have minus 1, which is 20. Okay, so that kind of little expression in there gets figured out. And then I have substring 3 comma 20. Okay. Now 3 comma 20 starts at 3, goes up to but not including 20. So CS is a fun class is what gets returned. That exclamation mark gets chopped off. Okay. And then the last one, a couple ones. So I have dot substring, and in the dot substring my first parameter is words.length minus 1, and my second parameter is words.length. Okay. Words.length minus 1 is 20, and words.length is 21. So my substring from 20 to 21 is going to exclamation mark. Okay. So when you do have those methods inside a method, which you might have, that's how they're evaluated. Okay. Method in a method. What you can also have is what's called a chaining command. And that's not necessarily a method in a method, but it's several methods chained together. So I changed up the example here. I have a phrase called, life is what happens when you are busy making other plans. Okay, and if you know where that quote is from, good job on you. Okay, but let's look at this first one. So I have an int length, meaning I'm going to be returning an integer at the end of this chain, and I want to store it in length. Now I have 2 method calls. I can see that with the dots. Okay, 2 method calls. They're kind of chained together here. So how do I evaluate a chain? Just like order of operations, you do it from left to right. So the first method call is phrase.substring 5, 12. And that's what's going to get returned first. So I went ahead and I indexed it on the slide there. It was a little hard to fit the numbers in, so that's why it's a little off kilter there, but I did my best. So when chaining, you want to evaluate methods from left to right. So substring 5, 12. 5 up to, but not including 12. 12 is that space right there. So 12 does not get included. 5 to 11. Okay, that phrase is what. Okay, so in quotes, is what. That's my new substring. Now when I do dot length of that, okay, now dot length of the is what. The indexes are reset 4, 5, 6. So that's my new string that I want to find the length of. Okay, so how many characters are there? That's going to be 7. Okay. Chaining commands. So 7 gets stored in length. Okay, let's check another one. Okay, so here I have method, 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 right? I also have a method inside of another method. Okay? And just like we talked about, method inside another method gets evaluated first. And then it goes from left to right. Okay? So evaluate phrase.index of busy. Okay? So busy, if we go back up to phrase, busy starts on index 34, as long as I didn't make a mistake there. It happened on 34. So the index of busy. So busy is my word, and it starts at index 34. So this, a 34 is returned in place of that method call. Okay. And then now I'm down to 2 method calls, and it's a chain. So I'm going to evaluate the first one first. Phrase.substring 34. Okay, means I start at 34. If it's just a single integer, I start at 34, and I just do the rest of my string, which is busy making other plans, period. Okay, busy making other plans, period. Now I want to know what that substring of 5 is. So again, this restarts because I made a new substring. 5, 6, yada yada yada. Dot substring 5 starts at the M and goes all the way to the end, right? So busy making other plans, dot substring 5 becomes making other plans, and that's what gets stored in results right here, which is a string. I expected a string to come out of that whole chaining command. Now that got a little obnoxious, okay? There are probably better ways to handle that inside of your code, but I just wanted you to see an example of chaining commands. We don't have to use chaining commands. We can use a series of statements to accomplish the same thing. This would be if you wanted it to happen all in one statement, okay, which you might see on the AP exam, so I want you to be prepared. But when you're actually writing your own code, you can have a series of statements that accomplish this instead. Okay. Well, we're almost done. We got a couple more examples, and then we're going to finish off talking about a few other useful methods that aren't on the AP exam. Okay. So some more examples, just really trying to drive home how these methods work. If you want to pause the video and try them on your own, you are more than welcome to, but I'm going to go through exactly what they are right now. The first one, string message. Jack and Jill went up the hill, all pressed together as one. I have inside there message.length -4. So there's 24 characters. You can count them up. 24 characters in that message, and then -4. 24 minus 4 is 20. So I do that expression, and then message.substring 20 means that hill is going to get printed off because the H starts at index 20, and then I just do the rest of the message there. Okay. Hello.substring 3. So you see here I actually have the word itself, the string literal, I don't have a reference to a string literal. I just have the string literal itself. Dot substring 3. Okay. So if you need to write your indexes over, feel free to do that because that's really helpful, especially when they're all kind of pressed together like that. 3 starts at the L and it goes all the way to the end. Hello dot substring 5. 5 is going to be the length of this. So it's going to be an empty string for this result. Now if I tried to go one more in a 6 and get a 6, I would get an error. Okay. Compiler error, index out of bounds, doesn't work. Okay. The next example. Okay. I have digits, a string of digits. Now don't let those throw you off. The indexes are still the same. They still start at 0 and go up by 1, even if your digits say something different. And then very important here, when you have index of, you're looking at index of where that character is. Okay, so that character is in index 5 of the digits. So 5 is going to get stored in POS, position, short for position. And then when I go to print off 5 plus digits.index of A, okay, A, where is A? Okay, A is nowhere in there. Okay, so this returns, remember, a -1. Okay, so you get 5 plus -1 because there's no A, so it returns a -1. So 4 is going to get printed to the console there. Okay. We have an example of a method chain here, dot substring 5 dot length. Dot substring 5 gets evaluated first. 5 starts the word sandwiches. Okay, and sandwiches dot length is going to be a length of 10. Okay, last one. Word 1 is hello, and word 2 is hello. Okay, 2 separate variables. Word 1 equals word 1 dot substring 1 comma 2. So this is evaluated. Okay, word 1 dot substring 1 comma 2 means it's just going to be the E. Okay, now E is going to get stored in the same variable as word 1. Okay, a new address is written, yeah, but it's going to become word 1. So hello disappears and it's going to be E gets stored in word 1. Okay, so now when you go to print them off, E and hello are word 1 and word 2. Okay, almost there. One more example. Ooh, wait, was that the last example? Oh, I'm sorry, that was the last example. Huh. All done. The last one I do want to talk about, though, the last little comment here, are some other useful string commands. You are welcome to use these in your code, and there are more string commands that you can use too, but these are ones that I found helpful when students start working on some of their projects a little bit later on. These are helpful for them to achieve what they want to achieve in those projects. So you can use these whenever, they're just not on the AP test. So I have an example called testing this command. Okay, so capital T, command is capitalized. Let's see what happens. The method to uppercase, so TO, capital U, capital C, to uppercase, returns a string and it changes all of the letters into uppercase. So if I did example.to uppercase, everything becomes uppercase. If it's already uppercase, it stays uppercase. Okay. Vice versa with to lowercase. Okay. To lowercase changes everything into a lowercase letter, like this, testing this command. Okay. Starts with and ends with. Okay, so starts with returns and ends with returns a Boolean. Okay, now Boolean, remember, can be true or false. So you're basically asking a question. Does example start with test? Okay, does it start with test? It does, yes. So your result is going to be true. Ends with. Does example ends with test? Okay, does it end with test? No. So false is going to be the result that is stored. And then the last method is called last index of. So we have dot index of, which returns the first occurrence of something. Dot last index of returns the last index of something. Okay, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10? I believe that's 10. The first index occurred right here. But last index of lowercase I, the last time lowercase I appears in that example is at index 10. So that, okay, good. That's what gets returned. And you can look these up online. There's a lot of string commands that ways you can manipulate strings, but here are a couple useful ones that I've seen. Okay. That wraps up our computer science lesson on string methods. I hope you learned a lot today. Thank you so much for following along, and I will see you next time.